The orphan who loved the rich man's daughter. Sohag was 22 years old when this story began. He lived in a small tin-roofed house at the edge of a quiet village. Life had never been kind to him. When he was only 5 years old, a tragic road accident took away both of his parents. Since then, he had grown up as an orphan, raised with the kindness of the village imam and a few compassionate neighbors. He owned nothing. No land. No savings. No family. Yet everyone in the village respected him because of his kind heart. Whenever someone needed help, Sohag was always the first to appear. He worked hard every day, carrying goods in the market, helping farmers, and doing any job he could find just to survive. Despite all the hardships, he never complained. He simply smiled and kept moving forward. One Friday afternoon, after finishing work at the local market, Sohag was walking home carrying a small bag of vegetables. The market was crowded and noisy. Suddenly, a luxurious black SUV stopped near the entrance. People immediately turned their heads. Everyone knew who it belonged to. The vehicle belonged to Abdul Qadir Chowdhury, the wealthiest man in the neighboring village. A few seconds later, a young woman stepped out. The entire market seemed to fall silent. She wore a simple white dress, yet she looked like someone from another world. Her long dark hair moved gently in the wind. Her eyes carried a softness that Sohag had never seen before. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. Her name was Neela, the only daughter of Abdul Qadir Chowdhury. She had come to the market to buy clothes and food for several poor families. Unlike many rich people, Neela was known for her kindness and generosity. As she walked through the market, one of her shopping bags suddenly slipped from her hand. The bag hit the ground. Books, notebooks, and several small items scattered across the dusty road. Many people watched. Nobody moved. Before anyone could react, Sohag rushed forward. He knelt on the ground and carefully picked up every item. A notebook had landed in a puddle nearby. He quickly grabbed it before it became wet. When he handed the bag back to her, Neela smiled. A simple smile. Just a few seconds. But for Sohag, it felt like time had stopped. "Thank you," she said softly. Sohag swallowed nervously. It was nothing. Neela smiled again. Then she got into the SUV and left. The vehicle slowly disappeared beyond the market road. Yet Sohag remained standing there. Watching. Waiting. Even after the car was gone. That night, he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her smile. He heard her voice. He remembered the kindness in her eyes. Deep inside, he knew the truth. Neela belonged to a world that was far beyond his reach. She was the daughter of the richest man in the area. He was an orphan who struggled to earn enough money for a single meal. Their lives were separated by wealth, status, and society itself. But the heart rarely listens to reason. Late that night, Sohag stepped outside. The sky was full of stars. A bright moon hung above the village. He looked up and whispered quietly, "I may never see you again. I may never even have the right to stand beside you. But today, for the first time in my life, someone made me believe that beauty still exists in this world." The cool night wind brushed against his face. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The village slept peacefully. But Sohag's heart had already begun a journey from which there would be no return. He didn't know it yet. That brief meeting in the market would change his life forever. And it would become the beginning of a love story filled with hope, sacrifice, heartbreak, and tears. A story that neither Sohag nor Neela could ever escape. The days after their first meeting passed slowly for Sohag. No matter how hard he tried to focus on work, Neela's smile continued to occupy his thoughts. Every morning, he woke up hoping to see her again. Every evening, he returned home disappointed. He knew it was foolish. A poor orphan dreaming about the daughter of the richest man in the region sounded like the beginning of a tragedy, not a love story. Yet he could not stop himself. 1 week later, fate brought them together again. It was a rainy afternoon. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the roads were nearly empty. Sohag had spent the day helping a farmer repair a damaged fence. On his way home, he stopped near the old river bridge to take shelter from the rain. As he stood there, he noticed someone sitting alone on a wooden bench nearby. A young woman, holding an umbrella, reading a book. His heart immediately skipped a beat. It was Neela. For several seconds, Sohag simply stared. What is she doing here alone? He wondered. The bridge was far from the wealthy neighborhoods where rich families usually spent their time. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew across the river. The book slipped from Neela's hands and fell into a puddle. Before she could react, Sohag rushed forward and picked it up. Neela looked up. Their eyes met. This time, she recognized him immediately. The market boy, she said with a smile. Sohag felt his face grow warm. I guess that's one way to remember me. Neela laughed softly. No. I remember kind people. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rain continued to fall around them. Finally, Neela broke the silence. What is your name? Sohag couldn't believe what he was hearing. She actually wanted to know. My name is Sohag. I'm Neela. I know. The moment the words left his mouth, he wished he could take them back. Neela raised an eyebrow playfully. You know? Sohag smiled awkwardly. Everyone knows who you are. She looked away toward the river. For the first time, her smile faded. Sometimes I wish they didn't. Sohag was surprised. Most people would love being famous and wealthy. Yet there was sadness in her voice. Neela closed her book. People think having money solves everything. Doesn't it? Sohag asked. She shook her head. My father decides everything for me. Where I go. Who I meet. What I study. Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Sohag listened quietly. He had spent years wishing for a life like hers. Now he realized that even beautiful lives could hide painful secrets. The rain grew heavier. Thunder echoed across the sky. Neela glanced toward the road. My driver is late. As if on cue, her phone lost signal. She sighed. Sohag looked around. A small tea shop stood nearby. If you want, we can wait there until the rain stops. Neela hesitated. Then she nodded. Inside the tiny tea shop, they sat across from each other drinking hot tea. For nearly an hour, they talked. About books. About dreams. About childhood memories. About the future. To Sohag's surprise, talking to Neela felt easy. She wasn't arrogant. She wasn't spoiled. She was simply kind. And Neela discovered something too. For the first time in a long while, she was speaking with someone who wanted nothing from her. Not her father's money. Not her family name. Just her. When the rain finally stopped, a black SUV pulled up outside. Her driver had arrived. Neela stood up. So, will I see you again, Sohag? His heart raced. I hope so. She smiled. Then she tore a small piece of paper from her notebook. Quickly, she wrote something on it and handed it to him. Sohag looked down. It was her phone number. If you ever want to talk, she said. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Neela walked toward the SUV. Before getting inside, she turned around one last time. "Goodbye, Sohag." As the vehicle disappeared down the road, Sohag stood there holding the small piece of paper. A simple phone number. Yet to him, it felt more valuable than all the money in the world. For the first time since losing his parents, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. But neither of them knew that someone had been watching from a distance. A man standing beneath a tree near the bridge had seen everything. And before the night was over, news of their meeting would reach Abdul Qadir Chowdhury. The man who would never allow his daughter to love a poor orphan. That night, Sohag stared at the small piece of paper for what felt like hours. Neela's phone number. A simple thing for most people. But for Sohag, it felt like a doorway into a world he had never imagined entering. He wanted to call her. Yet fear stopped him. What if she didn't remember him? What if she had only given him the number out of politeness? What if her family found out? The questions kept circling inside his mind. Finally, just before midnight, he gathered enough courage and sent a simple message. "Hello. This is Sohag. Asterisk." After sending it, he immediately regretted it. His heart pounded as he waited. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. A reply. "I was wondering when you would text me." Asterisk. Sohag smiled so widely that his cheeks hurt. For the next 2 hours, they talked. About everything. Their favorite books. The places they dreamed of visiting. The things that scared them. The things they hoped for. For the first time in years, Sohag felt truly understood. And for the first time in her life, Neela felt free. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations became a part of everyday life. Every morning began with a message. Every night ended with one. Slowly, a beautiful friendship began to grow between them. But they kept it secret. Neither of them wanted trouble. One evening, Neela asked him to meet near the riverside where they had first spoken. Sohag arrived early. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. When Neela arrived, she was carrying a small gift box. "What's this?" Sohag asked. Neela smiled. "Open it." Inside was a wristwatch. Simple but elegant. Sohag's eyes widened. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" "It's too expensive." Neela shook her head. "It's not expensive. And besides, friends give gifts." Friends. The word should have made him happy. Instead, it hurt a little. Because deep down, he knew his feelings were becoming something much stronger. He wasn't just looking forward to their conversations anymore. He wasn't just happy when he saw her. He was falling in love. And that realization terrified him. Because love was dangerous. Especially for someone like him. As they sat by the river talking, neither noticed a black car parked far away beneath the trees. Inside the car sat a man in his 40s. Rahman. The personal assistant of Abdul Qadir Chowdhury. His eyes never left them. That night, Rahman reported everything to Neela's father. Abdul Qadir listened silently. His face grew darker with every word. "A poor orphan," he finally said. "Yes, sir." "Does he have land?" "No." "Family?" "No." "Money?" "No." The wealthy businessman stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the lights of his mansion glowed against the darkness. His voice became cold. "End this before it becomes a problem." The next afternoon, Sohag received an unexpected visitor. A black luxury car stopped in front of his tiny house. Villagers watched in surprise. Rahman stepped out. He looked around the poor surroundings with visible disgust. Then he handed Sohag an envelope. "What is this?" Sohag asked. "Advice." Sohag opened it. Inside was money. More money than he usually earned in several months. His face immediately hardened. "I don't understand." Rahman looked directly into his eyes. "You know exactly what this is." Sohag felt his stomach tighten. "Stay away from Miss Neela." The words hit him like a punch. Rahman continued. "You and she belong to different worlds. Accept reality before someone gets hurt." Sohag slowly closed the envelope. Then he handed it back. "I don't want your money." Rahman's expression changed. "Be smart." "I am." "Then stay away." Sohag's voice remained calm. "I never asked for her father's money." "That doesn't matter." Rahman stepped closer. "What matters is that people like you should know their place." For the first time, anger flashed in Sohag's eyes. But he said nothing. Rahman returned to the car. Before leaving, he rolled down the window. "This is your only warning." The car disappeared down the road. Sohag stood there alone. His hands trembling. Not because he was afraid, but because he finally understood the truth. The powerful people around Neela would never allow someone like him into their world. That night, Neela called him. The moment she heard his voice, she knew something was wrong. "Sohag, what happened?" For a few seconds, he remained silent. Then he told her everything. When he finished, there was silence on the other end. A long silence. Finally, Neela spoke. Her voice shaking. "I'm sorry." Sohag looked up at the stars. "It's not your fault." But deep inside, both of them knew something had changed. Their friendship was no longer a harmless secret. It had become a battle. A battle against wealth. Against power. Against society itself. And neither of them knew that a far greater storm was already approaching. A storm that would test their love in ways they could never imagine. After Rahman's warning, Sohag tried to distance himself from Neela. He stopped sending good morning messages. He replied late to her texts. Sometimes he didn't reply at all. He told himself it was the right thing to do. The wealthy had power. People like him did not. If he truly cared about Neela, perhaps he should disappear from her life before things became worse. But every day without her felt empty. The laughter he once carried so naturally began to fade. The villagers noticed the change. Even the imam who had raised him asked one evening, "Son, why do your eyes look so sad these days?" Sohag simply smiled and changed the subject. Meanwhile, Neela was suffering too. She could feel him slipping away. Every unanswered message felt like a knife in her heart. Finally, one afternoon, she called him repeatedly until he answered. "Sohag." Her voice trembled. "Why are you avoiding me?" Sohag closed his eyes. "I'm not." "Don't lie to me." Silence. Then Neela whispered. "Meet me tomorrow. Please." Before he could refuse, she ended the call. The next evening they met near the old riverside where their friendship had begun. The sun was setting. The river reflected golden light across the water. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Neela looked directly into his eyes. "Do you really want to leave?" Sohag lowered his head. "Your father was right." The words hurt even as he said them. "We belong to different worlds." Neela stared at him in disbelief. "Is that what you believe?" Sohag forced a smile. "What I believe doesn't matter. It matters to me." His heart raced. Neela stepped closer. "So answer me honestly. He couldn't. Because the truth terrified him. Neela's eyes filled with tears. "Then I'll answer for you." Sohag looked up. His breath stopped. "I love you." The world seemed to freeze. The river. The wind. The birds overhead. Everything. For months, Sohag had dreamed of hearing those words. Yet now that they had finally been spoken, he could hardly believe them. Neela wiped away a tear. "I've tried to deny it." She laughed sadly. "I told myself we were just friends." Another tear rolled down her cheek. "But every day I wait for your messages. Every night I think about you. And every time I imagine losing you." Her voice broke. "It hurts." Sohag felt his own eyes sting. For years he had survived loneliness, poverty, pain. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Slowly, he reached for her hand. "I love you too." The words escaped before he could stop them. Neela smiled through her tears. For a brief moment, they forgot everything else. The wealth. The social status. The impossible distance between their worlds. All that existed was love. But happiness rarely lasts forever. Unknown to them, someone was watching. Again. This time, it wasn't Rahman. It was Abdul Qadir Chowdhury himself. From inside his vehicle parked across the road. His face darkened as he watched his daughter holding the hand of a poor orphan. The next morning, Neela was summoned to her father's study. The room felt colder than usual. Abdul Qadir stood beside the window. His expression unreadable. "Who is Sohag?" Neela's heart sank. She immediately understood. He knew. For several seconds she remained silent. Then she answered honestly. "The man I love." The words exploded through the room like thunder. Abdul Qadir slammed his hand against the desk. "Love?" His voice shook with anger. "Do you know who you are?" "Yes." "Do you know who he is?" Neela looked directly at him. "He's a good man." "I didn't ask if he was good." Abdul Qadir's eyes burned with fury. "He's poor." The room fell silent. Then Neela quietly replied. "Being poor isn't a crime." Her father's face hardened. "It is when someone dreams above his station." Neela couldn't believe what she was hearing. For the first time in her life, she felt afraid of her own father. That evening, Abdul Qadir made a decision. A cruel decision. One that would change everything. He called Rahman. "I've arranged Neela's engagement." Rahman looked surprised. "So soon?" "Within 3 months." "To whom?" Abdul Qadir smiled coldly. "Farhan Malik. One of the richest young businessmen in the country. Powerful. Wealthy. Influential. Exactly the kind of husband Abdul Qadir wanted. And exactly the kind of man Neela could never love." Far away, unaware of the storm approaching, Sohag sat outside his small house looking at the stars. He was smiling. For the first time in months. Because he believed love had finally won. But fate had already begun writing a different ending. One filled with heartbreak, sacrifice, and unbearable pain. The next morning, Neela woke up feeling uneasy. Her father's words from the previous night still echoed in her mind. Within 3 months. Farhan Malik. She knew her father was serious. Abdul Qadir Chowdhury never made empty decisions. Still, she couldn't accept it. Not when her heart belonged to someone else. Not when Sohag existed in every breath she took. She quickly grabbed her phone and called him. No answer. She tried again. Still no answer. Her hand started shaking. Something was wrong. Meanwhile, Sohag was at work in the village market, carrying heavy sacks of grain for a merchant. His phone was left at home, charging beside his bed. He didn't know Neela was desperately trying to reach him. And he didn't know that the storm was already moving faster than he could imagine. That afternoon, Rahman arrived again. Same black car. Same cold expression. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 bodyguards stood behind him. Sohag immediately noticed them. "You again?" he asked calmly. Rahman handed him another envelope. "This is not money this time," he said. Sohag didn't open it immediately. "What is it then?" "A warning, and a final opportunity." Sohag opened the envelope. Inside was a printed document. His eyes scanned it slowly. Then his heart stopped. It was a job offer. But not a normal one. It was a contract. A transfer job in another city, far away, with good salary, and housing provided. But there was a condition written clearly at the bottom. Employee must not maintain any personal contact with Neela Chowdhury. Sohag's jaw tightened. He looked up. This is not a job. This is a bribe. Rahman stayed calm. Call it whatever you want. Your life will improve. Sohag laughed bitterly. You think money can buy me away from her? Rahman's expression turned colder. It already has bought many things in this world. Sohag stepped closer. I won't accept it. Rahman sighed. You are making a mistake. Sohag's voice was firm. The mistake would be leaving her. For a moment, silence filled the air. Then Rahman leaned in slightly. Let me explain something to you. His voice dropped. Miss Neela is engaged. The world around Sohag blurred. He froze. Engaged? Rahman nodded. To Farhan Malik. Sohag felt like the ground beneath him disappeared. Impossible, he whispered. It's already decided. Rahman continued. And if you truly care about her, you will disappear before you destroy her future. The car engine started. Rahman placed the envelope on a nearby table. This is your last chance to choose wisely. The car left. Sohag stood alone. For a long time, he didn't move. Engaged. The word kept echoing inside his mind like thunder. That evening, Neela finally reached him. When Sohag answered, his voice sounded different. Broken. Sohag, why weren't you answering? She asked urgently. He stayed silent for a moment. Then he spoke. I heard everything. Neela's heart dropped. You know? Yes. Silence filled the line. Then Neela cried softly. It's not my choice. I know, Sohag said quietly. My father is forcing me. I know, he repeated. A long pause followed. Then Sohag asked something that hurt him more than anything else in his life. Do you love him? Neela answered immediately. No. Her voice shook. I only love you. Those words should have brought happiness. But instead, they brought pain. Because love alone was not enough. Not in their world. Not against power like Abdul Qadir Chowdhury. Sohag closed his eyes. If you stay with me, your life will be destroyed. Neela cried. I don't care about that life. But I do, he whispered. Another silence. Then Sohag said something that broke both their hearts. I think we should stop. Neela froze. What? Sohag's voice cracked. I can't watch you suffer because of me. No, she said quickly. Don't say that. I have to. Neela cried harder. Please don't leave me. Sohag clenched his fists so tightly his nails dug into his skin. But his voice remained calm. I'm sorry, Neela. And then he ended the call. The phone slipped from Neela's hand. She fell to her knees, crying uncontrollably. Far away, Sohag sat alone in the dark. Silent. Broken. But he believed he had done the right thing. Because sometimes love is not about holding on. Sometimes, it is about letting go. But neither of them knew. This decision would not end their story. It would only begin the most painful chapter of their lives. After Sohag ended the call, silence swallowed Neela's world. She kept staring at her phone, hoping it would ring again. But it didn't. Not even a message. Just emptiness. That night, she didn't sleep. She kept replaying his words in her mind. I think we should stop. Each time she heard it, her heart broke a little more. For the first time in her life, Neela felt powerless. Not because she was weak, but because everything around her life was controlled by her father. The next morning, Abdul Qadir Chowdhury entered her room. You look tired, he said coldly. Neela didn't respond. He placed a file on the table. This is your engagement confirmation. Everything is ready. Neela stood up immediately. I won't marry him. Her voice was firm. Abdul Qadir raised an eyebrow. You will. I said no. A heavy silence filled the room. Then her father spoke slowly. You think this is a request? Neela's hands trembled, but she didn't step back. I love someone else. Her father's expression darkened. That poor boy? Neela's eyes widened. You know his name? Abdul Qadir smiled faintly. I know everything that happens under my roof. Neela's heart raced. Then you also know I won't leave him. Her father walked closer. His voice turned sharp. You will forget him. I can't. Then I will make you forget. Neela felt fear rising inside her. What does that mean? Abdul Qadir turned away. I am sending you abroad for studies. Tonight. Neela froze. Tonight? Yes. No phone. No contact. No distractions. She rushed forward. You can't do this. But he didn't listen. I can. And I already have. That night, Neela tried everything. She called Sohag again and again. But his phone was unreachable. Because Sohag had already made his own decision. Far away, in his small village room, Sohag packed a small bag. He had accepted Rahman's job offer. Not because he wanted money. But because he wanted Neela to have peace. He whispered to himself. If I disappear, maybe she can live without pain. The next morning, he left the village. No goodbye. No message. Only silence behind him. Neela reached the airport in tears. She fought with her father. She screamed. She begged. But nothing worked. As she was being taken toward the departure gate, she suddenly stopped. Her eyes widened. Across the airport glass wall. She thought she saw him. Sohag. Standing far away. For a second, their eyes met. Neela pushed forward. Sohag. But security stopped her. She screamed his name again and again. Tears blurred her vision. But when she looked again, he was gone. Because it wasn't really him. Just a memory created by her broken heart. On a bus far away, Sohag was already leaving the city. He looked out of the window. Tears fell silently. I'm sorry, Neela. He whispered into the wind. I had to become the villain of your happiness. But destiny was not finished yet. 3 years passed. But for Sohag and Neela, it felt like they were still stuck in the same painful moment. Time moved on, but their hearts didn't. #### Sohag's new life. Sohag now lived in a big city. He worked in a logistics company under Rahman's arranged job. At first, it felt like freedom. Better salary. Better room. Better life. But inside, he was empty. Every night, he sat alone by the window of his small apartment, staring at the city lights. And every light reminded him of Neela. He never contacted her. Not once. He believed she had moved on. That she was living a better life, far away from him. But he was wrong. ### Neela's new world. Neela had been sent abroad for studies. London. A city full of dreams for others, but a prison for her. She studied, attended classes, smiled in front of people. But inside, she was broken. She never accepted her engagement with Farhan Malik. In fact, she refused it completely after going abroad. The engagement was quietly cancelled. But freedom didn't bring happiness. Because the person she wanted freedom for, was gone. Sohag had disappeared. No message. No call. No trace. Only silence. ### the pain that never ends. One rainy night in London, Neela sat by her window. The sound of rain reminded her of the riverside where they first met. She opened her old phone. Inside, she still had Sohag's last message saved. "I think we should stop." *. She whispered through tears. "You liar, you didn't stop loving me." ### Sohag's hidden truth. In the city, Sohag's life was not as simple as it seemed. Rahman's job wasn't just a normal job. There was a hidden condition. Sohag had unknowingly been pushed into protecting Neela from a distance. Every move of her life was still being watched by her father's network. And Sohag was always in the background, silently involved. But he never knew one truth. Neela had never stopped loving him. Not even for a second. ### The unexpected discovery. One evening, Sohag was sent to deliver documents for work. The address shocked him. It belonged to a high-level business event. When he entered the building, his heart stopped. On a large screen inside the hall, a photo appeared. It was Neela. But not the Neela he remembered. She had changed. More mature. More beautiful. But her eyes still carried sadness. Sohag froze. He whispered, "Neela." At that exact moment, Neela was also attending the same event in another part of the building. A charity conference. She was giving a speech. When she stepped onto the stage, her eyes scanned the audience. And suddenly, she saw him, standing far away. For a moment, everything stopped. Her voice disappeared. Her breath stopped. Her heart screamed one name. Sohag. But just like before, he was gone in the crowd. Or maybe he never moved. Maybe destiny was playing with them again. ### The twist begins. That night, something strange happened. Rahman called Sohag urgently. His voice was different. Serious. Almost afraid. "Sohag, everything is changing." "What do you mean?" Sohag asked. Rahman paused. Then said something that changed everything. "Neela is coming back." Sohag's heart stopped. "Coming back?" "Yes," Rahman replied. But not alone. A long silence followed. Then Rahman said the final line. She is coming back to find you. Because love that is forced apart doesn't disappear. It turns into something stronger. Something painful. Something unforgettable. And somewhere, deep inside both their hearts, they were still holding on. Even when the world said let go. The news hit Sohag like a thunderbolt. Neela is coming back. Those words echoed in his mind long after the call ended. He stood motionless in his small apartment, staring at the dark window. Coming back. After 3 years of silence. After 3 years of pain. After 3 years of believing she had moved on. His hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. But from something deeper. Hope. #### Neela's decision. In London, Neela had already made her choice. She could no longer live in a world where Sohag didn't exist. No matter how successful she became. No matter how far she went. Her heart always returned to one place. Him. So she made a bold decision. She left her studies unfinished. She ignored her father's warnings. She booked a flight back home. Not to obey anyone. Not to escape anyone. But to find Sohag. #### The hidden past begins to surface. Back in the city, Rahman met Sohag secretly. This time, his expression was different. No arrogance. No control. Only tension. You need to understand something, Rahman said quietly. Sohag frowned. What now? Rahman hesitated. Then finally spoke. Neela's father didn't just separate you two. Sohag's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Rahman looked around, then lowered his voice. There was another reason you were forced away. A silence fell between them. Sohag's heart began to race. Explain. Rahman sighed. 3 years ago, your life was not as simple as you think. He handed Sohag a folder. Inside were old documents. Financial records. Medical reports. And one shocking detail. Sohag's father's accident was not fully accidental. Sohag's face turned pale. What is this? Rahman continued slowly. There are signs that your family's past is connected to powerful business conflicts involving Neela's father. Sohag stepped back. No, that's impossible. Rahman nodded. I hoped it was too. #### Neela returns. That same evening, a black car arrived at the airport. Neela stepped out. Different now. Stronger. No longer the scared girl her father controlled. She had returned with only one goal. Find Sohag. She looked at the city lights and whispered. I'm here now. I won't leave until I find you. #### Fate's first collision. At the same moment, Sohag was walking out of a building after work. Rain began to fall. He stopped under a streetlight. And then, he saw her. Across the road. Standing still. Looking straight at him. Neela. For a few seconds, neither moved. The world became silent again. Just like the first day. Just like the riverside. Neela's eyes filled instantly. Sohag. Her voice broke through the rain. He whispered back. Neela. And slowly, he stepped forward. So did she. 2 steps. 5 steps. 10 steps. Until finally, they stood only a few feet apart. But before either of them could speak, a black car suddenly stopped behind them. Rahman's voice came from inside. Get away from her. Both of them froze. Because they realized something terrifying. Their reunion was not going to be simple. It was the beginning of a truth they were never ready for. A truth that could destroy everything. Rain poured heavily over the city that night. Neela stood frozen on one side of the road. Sohag on the other. And between them, Rahman's black car. His words still echoed in the air. Get away from her. But this time, neither of them moved. The truth comes out. Rahman stepped out of the car slowly. His face looked tired, almost guilty. This has gone far enough, he said. Neela stepped forward angrily. What is going on? Why are you stopping us again? Rahman looked at Sohag, then at Neela. Then he said something that shattered both of them. Your families were never meant to meet, because they are connected by blood and betrayal. Silence. Even the rain felt quieter. Sohag's voice shook. What are you talking about? Rahman opened a file. Old documents. Photographs. Records from years ago. Then the truth came out. Sohag's father had once worked under Abdul Qadir Chowdhury's business empire. But after discovering illegal dealings, he tried to expose them. A conflict began. And shortly after, the accident happened. It was never fully investigated. But everything pointed toward one hidden cover-up. Neela's father had not only separated Sohag and Neela. He had also buried a dark past that connected their families forever. Neela fell to her knees. No, that can't be true. Sohag stood silent. His whole world collapsing inside him. The final choice. Rahman lowered his voice. I was told to keep you apart, not just because of money. But because if you come together, the past will destroy both families. Neela cried. I don't care about any of that. She stood up and ran toward Sohag. She grabbed his hand tightly. I love him. Nothing else matters. Sohag looked at her. For the first time in years, he didn't feel fear. Only love. Pure and painful. But then he saw it. Far away, another car arriving. Abdul Qadir Chowdhury. He had come himself. The father's last order. He stepped out slowly. His eyes locked on Neela. This ends now. Neela cried. No, Baba, please. Sohag stepped forward. I will leave her forever, just don't hurt her. But Neela grabbed his arm. No. Don't you dare say that again. Tears fell from both of them. Abdul Qadir's face hardened. You think love is stronger than reality? Sohag stayed silent. Because deep down, he knew the truth. Sometimes it wasn't. The sacrifice. Sohag turned to Neela. His voice was soft. If I stay, your life will never be peaceful. Neela shook her head. I don't want peace without you. He smiled sadly. That's why I have to go. Before she could stop him, he gently removed her hand and stepped back. Neela screamed. No. But Sohag kept walking away. Rain swallowed his footsteps. His final words came through the storm. I loved you in every lifetime, even if I couldn't have you in this one. Neela collapsed on the ground, crying uncontrollably. Years later. Time passed. Neela never married. She built a foundation for poor children. Named it Sohag Hope Center ***. Every year, on a rainy night, she visited the riverside. And sat silently, waiting for nothing, but remembering everything. Somewhere far away. In another city, a man stood by a small window. Sohag. Older now. Quieter. still carrying the same watch she once gave him. He whispered to himself. Some love stories don't end, they just live in silence. He closed his eyes. And smiled. Because even though life separated them, their hearts never did.